Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade may move up in weight. And guess what? He could become Canelo Alvarez. Pay his mandatory at 168 pounds. Let's talk about it in this video. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live, Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Yo, what up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Happy New Year 2022. We lit. Appreciate everybody for the continued support on the channel. I just want to say that. Let's make this a great year. Now, if you could throw a like button, you will be the first people to like my videos in 2022. So let's talk about it. Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade. Eddie Hearn did an interview, and he says that Demetrius Andrade may end up moving up in weight to 168 pounds, and he could become Canelo Alvarez's mandatory. Now, I wanted to make a video talking about this subject. I got a lot of different things to say, and some of them aren't too pleasant, if you will. So first of all, Demetrius Andrade, he looks in shape right there, and he looks like he can definitely move up to 168. I've been around Andrade several times at fights and watched him spar and different things like that. He definitely has the frame and the height where he could easily move up in weight and compete at 168. He has the skill set. He's a southpaw, very awkward style. And the one thing that's weird about Demetrius Andrade is I feel like his style has gotten even more awkward. You know, it's gotten more awkward as time went on. Like he just, sometimes he's patient, sometimes he's not patient, and he just kind of mixed it up in that regard. And for that reason, he's an Olympian and makes him very dangerous. Now, as far as Demetrius Andrade moving up and being Canelo's mandatory, I really still don't see much changing, because Canelo Alvarez has showed you who he is. And I've said it for a while. I believe that Canelo Alvarez is a diva of sorts, and he feels he's earned everything and made his name. So he's to the point where he feels he's untouchable. He can do whatever he wants. He feels he's the face of boxing. His team, you know, says this much, and that's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. So at the end of the day, even if Andrade moves up to 168 pounds and becomes Canelo Alvarez's mandatory, Canelo will probably be like, so I don't care. The other thing that is cause for concern is the fact that Canelo Alvarez, Mr. Payday, right? Canelo Alvarez has stated that him and his team have stated that he might move up to fight at cruiserweight, which really makes no sense. His team, and I made a video about this, his team already shot down immediately a great fighter and former undisputed champion at that division, Alexander Usyk, who heard that Canelo was making the move up and coming to cruiserweight. So even though Usyk is at heavyweight currently and he just beat Anthony Joshua, he said for a name like Canelo and to challenge himself, he would be willing to make the sacrifice and go back down in weight in order to do that. But as quick as he did that call out, that's pretty much as quick as Eddie Reynoso let it be known that he's not going to take the fight. He said straight up, you know, he said straight up, I ain't making that fight. I made a video about it. You guys could check that on the channel. He basically said, no way. We have Frank Sanchez. He's a heavyweight. Usyk can fight him, you know, and took him out of the equation. So we know the games. We know the gamesmanship. I don't really see Canelo bending to the will of the WBO, who Andrade would likely be linked through, even if he moves up to 168, that would be probably the path that makes him become the mandatory. But Canelo, he told the WBC in the past this. He says he doesn't care. He's not going to be held to artificial deadlines. This is what he said. This is why, if you guys remember, when Canelo vacated his WBC belt, he vacated it and gave it to Gennady Golovkin in that particular year. I think it was 2016. Even though he later fought Golovkin, that given year, he says, I'm not going to be pigeonholed or met with these artificial deadlines, so Golovkin could have the belt. And then there was some friction between Canelo Alvarez and the WBC at that given point. Because if you remember, Canelo moved up from 54 and fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., a long anticipated or fight that people were clamoring for when they first came up. Because you remember, Canelo and Chavez Jr. both broke out of Mexico and started making waves in their name in America around the same time. And needless to say, for that Chavez Jr. fight, Canelo wasn't messing with the WBC because they had a Huicho belt and Canelo refused to accept it. So fast forward to the future, you got to feel for Demetrius Andrade. I feel real bad for him, but he's not completely a victim, because he even did an interview where he said, who else is going to pay me this type of money to fight the Lucas Keelers of the world? But at the same time, we know what it is. We know that he's called out Canelo, Charlo brothers, and others. I can't really say that Charlo, this is why I got to focus a little bit more on the Canelo, because he did have an opportunity. I'm a fair critic. Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade had an opportunity to at least fight one of the Charlos, Jermell Charlo, on Showtime on an Amir Khan undercard. That is 1,000% true. It's 1,000% fact. Him and his dad pulled out of the fight for money reasons, or they were working with HBO and didn't want to go to Showtime and reconsidered, or whatever the situation was, but they pulled out of already an established Jermell Charlo fight. Now, granted, Jermell Charlo wasn't as big as he is now, and he's one belt away from undisputed, so those weren't the things that were the case, but he still could have at least fought Charlo, at least one of them. So the real thing, the curious case of Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, probably the craziest thing to me is the fact that Eddie Hearn, promoter of Triple G, Caleb Sanders, Billy Joe Saunders, he says he's on Canelo's team. He's Demetrius Andrade's promoter. There was a point in time when DAZN first started making their play to take over America, or whatever Eddie Hearn was talking about. And at that given moment, it was stated by Eddie Hearn that guys that were outside of the DAZN network of fighters and roster, guys like Jermall Charlo, he specifically said, I remember, you guys can find all these interviews, but I remember Eddie Hearn specifically stated that Jermall Charlo, if he wanted to become a star, he needed to sign to DAZN, because they have the top names pretty much at 160 and 168, and they got it locked down. The irony of this whole statement, and why I'm bringing it up in my Unpacked series, is because they did have a lot of names all signed to DAZN from 160 to 168. However, they really didn't make a lot of the pertinent fights when they were relevant, or maybe even all, including a ton of fights that we could have seen. We could have seen Triple G and Demetrius Andrade fight 2 or 3 times by now, in the amount of time that, they've all been on the same roster. But Demetrius Andrade continues to be the odd man out in that equation. Even Danny Jacobs, another African-American fighter, right, has gotten bigger looks. He's gotten bigger look. He's even fighting John Ryder, I think, in the UK. That's still probably better than fighting whoever Demetrius Andrade fought, Jason Quigley, who barely passed Sugar Shane Mosley's son, right? And who got knocked out a couple years ago. You know what I mean? And it's like Demetrius Andrade, it's like he's not even being really moved. He's not even really being moved. Now, I will say, I got so many different things. That's why it's so many different layers to this. That's why it's hard to focus on one specific subject with the curious case of Demetrius Andrade. It's like, I don't know if he's content with it or if he likes the looks that he's getting, but I think he's really a talented fighter and he's not getting any of the big matches. Then the WBO ordered him to fight the Janik dude or whatever the dude's name is. And Eddie Hearn doesn't seem keen on that fight. So Andrade may move up to pursue big fights at 168, possibly become a mandatory for Canelo. But as I stated, I don't think, look, Canelo got all this. That's a dope picture though. Canelo posted this. Canelo is not tripping off no belts, I can assure you. You know what I mean? So even if that, look at the rules, how they've been for Canelo. That's all I'm gonna say. When Canelo had Jamal Charlo as his mandatory, basically with the WBC, they found a way by creating this weak franchise champion crap, and they found a way to have Canelo Alvarez weasel out of fighting his mandatory. So I have zero, I repeat, zero faith that boxing gets it right and finally makes the Canelo and Demetrius Andrade fight. I have zero faith. Not saying it can't happen absolutely, but what I am saying is I won't hold my breath for it, because Canelo Alvarez, like I keep telling you, he's in the driver's seat and he knows it. And we know that Andrade is a difficult style matchup for anybody. And the way him and Eddie Reynoso have been moving and saying they're moving and kissing each other on the cheek or whatever, it just doesn't lead me to believe that Andrade would be even an option in the queue. You got to keep in mind, after the Billy Joe Saunders victory for Canelo, where Canelo won by knockout, Canelo Alvarez was approached by Demetrius Andrade. And Andrade, you know, I got to watch it again, but he didn't seem like he came like looking for beef. And then Canelo was like, man, get the F out of here. And it just escalated really fast. But he even said something like, I'm a fan of yours. You're a good fighter, blah, blah, blah. And then for whatever reason, I got to go watch it again because, you know, I don't remember the chronological order of everything. But bottom line is it escalated into the point where Canelo was like, get the F out of here. Get the F out of here. You just want a payday. You're a horrible fighter, horrible fighter. You suck. You're horrible. You know, you fight with nobody. So if he was saying that literally like 2 fights ago, what makes any of you guys believe that Canelo Alvarez really wants to fight? He said, he basically has said in interviews and in that moment, I'll never fight you because you're a horrible fighter. You're a horrible fighter. You fight with nobody. Who have you fought? Who have you beat? And one of the saddest things that boxing and the boxing fans and Canelo Man fans allow Canelo to say stuff like that is because he'll then turn around and fight somebody who's less regarded than whoever he's trying to not fight. Like they'll say, Canelo's team will say, David Benavidez, you ain't fought with nobody. Demetrius Andrade, you're a horrible fighter. Horrible fighter. You fight with nobody. But then they'll fight Makabu, Makbuk Air. They'll fight Rocky Fielding, no questions asked. They'll fight average eardrum or whatever. And that's the sad part, that boxing allows that. So it's hard for me to have faith that boxing will serve justice to fighters like Demetrius Andrade. It's possible he's content with the situation, getting overpaid to fight guys he can beat easily. But I'm not really impressed with the news from Eddie Hearn that, and Eddie Hearn, like, truth be told, Eddie Hearn has no control over Canelo Alvarez. I think he's just happy to be here type of situation. Canelo is lit, or Eddie Hearn feels that Canelo's lit, so he's just happy to be in association and try to make some money he's happy to be on Canelo's good side, just like the WBC. So he just wants to make some money with Canelo. So publicly, Eddie Hearn will say that he's pushing for Andrade to get these big looks, but behind the scenes, you know that's not entirely true because nothing is being manifested. And it's funny because people give Eddie Hearn all this props and say that Eddie Hearn is the promoter of the year and things like that. And I'm like, how? How is he promoter of the year? But he got fighters who have to beg Charlo and look like they're clout chasing because they got 6-7 dudes on the zone that Andrade coulda, shoulda fought, coulda, shoulda, woulda fought, and none of them got made. Jaime Munguia, he's with DAZN, albeit he's not with Eddie Hearn, he's still with DAZN. Eddie Hearn worked with Golden Boy for several Canelo fights, Rocky Fielding, etc. Danny Jacobs, that's an Eddie Hearn fighter, but they can't work together to make Demetrius Andrade versus his mandatory, Jaime Munguia. Eddie Hearn has Triple G's career, and in post-fight, after Andrade's fight, he said that Charlo or Triple G need to step up and fight Andrade. Okay, why doesn't Triple G fight Andrade? His fight with, listen, to the point where, that's why I know what I'm doing, I'm destroying him. I know what I'm saying is accurate, because Triple G rather fight Ryota Murata in Japan, and we're in a pandemic, and there's a new variant. So Japan has pretty much closed its borders to foreigners and said, hey, if you're not from here, don't come here right now, right? And now it's very hard to travel with the travel bans and the Rona and things like that. And Triple G would rather just postpone and have zero activity for all of last year, 2021. He did not fight one single time. And he would rather do these types of things than to make a fight where Triple G is in America training with Jonathan Banks. Demetrius Andrade is in America training with his people close to Rhode Island, right? You don't have to worry about travel bans. And it's a great fight. And Andrade's a champion, Triple G's a champion, but DAZN and Eddie Hearn and Team Triple G cannot get it done, and they will not make the fight. So it's just funny to hear Eddie Hearn constantly talk about PBC and Showtime fights and Fox and PBC's budget and, you know, call out names, and you can't even get the fights for your own fighters. Andrade, how do you work with, just if I'm lying, you guys tell me in the comment section what I'm saying that's false. How did Andrade sign up for DAZN before Canelo, before Triple G, but he's not fought either on the platform? Canelo and Triple G have not had a third fight or a fight on DAZN since they both been signed up. This is criminal. How do you have three guys who, now Canelo's moving up and talking about cruiserweight and stuff like that, but there was a time where they were all in the 160, 168 range. They coulda, shoulda fought. How do you have those three talents? Two of them are Olympians. Canelo says he's the face of boxing, but you can't get none of them to fight each other. And then you be worried about what Charlo's doing and Steven Espinoza and Showtime and saying they're going out of business. It's absurd. It's absurd. You know, they should have fought. Billy Joe Saunders, how come after he failed a drug test, he didn't reschedule the Andrade fight? And Eddie Hearn, again, gets points, and people say, oh, Eddie Hearn, he's an awesome promoter because he's smiling in the camera and stuff like that. But what fights are you getting for your fighters like Andrade? How come you had Kell Brook, so basically, realistically, and Amir Khan signed on with Eddie Hearn, and then they didn't make the fight? Now they both left Eddie Hearn, and Eddie Hearn leaves Sky Sports, and Sky Sports, they get the fight Kell Brook and Amir Khan done? That doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't make sense. How does Amir Khan, Kell Brook, they're fighting plenty years too late. They both was with Eddie Hearn a couple years ago, and he couldn't get the fight done. Just like he's not getting no fights done for Andrade. I promise you, I like Andrade a lot. I think he could scrap. I watched the man spar and all that. But my thing is this, Andrade has not fought none of the names that I really cared to see him fight. And that's no cap. I'm not gonna start a brand new year by capping. That's not my thing. If you look at Andrade's last 5-6 fights, look 31-0, and we'll look at the names. Like you could get him some Chavez Jr. or somebody. It's Jason Quigley, Liam Williams, Lucas Keeler, Max Lex. He not even Arthur Akar. He ain't fought one American, bro. He ain't fought one dude from Mexico or anything. Some random African because Billy Joe Saunders. Look, that's what it's been. How do you have a how you have a steady diet of all foreign fighters, and then on top of that, it's cool to be, if you're a foreign fighter that has a name, like Kovalev had a name at one point, or whoever the case is, Manny Pacquiao, but you fighting all like unheralded names. So I really don't see Canelo budging. He's already tried to front Andrade off, and as long as Andrade continues to not get top level fights, then Canelo's gonna use that against him and say, hey, you fight nobody, you fight with nobody. Hey, payday, you want payday. I know that, so you got to feel for the guy, but that's the reality of his situation and the boxing politics. Let me know how I did in this video. We unpacked. The future is now. The Hibernation 5s by Kenichi Bear. Hybrid gaming and lifestyle headphones. Out of the box, you can connect to any console or PC. Bluetooth ready. With a low latency USB adapter, color RGB, and extreme bass mode. The Hibernation 5s adjust to you. Whether you need a gaming, travel, gym, or lifestyle headphones, the Hibernations got you covered. The new Hibernation 5s, link in the description. Customize the way you hear the world. Welcome to the nation. Are you tired of your YouTube videos not getting any views? Well, consider TubeBuddy. I've used TubeBuddy for years to scale up my YouTube channel. Now we're sitting over 200,000 subscribers. TubeBuddy is a browser extension that offers a ton of built-in productivity and time-saving services to take your channel to the next level. Use my link in the description to get started with TubeBuddy and level up your channel faster.